Probably been changed into my night clothes, so I took a school uniform made of bloodstained human skin out of my closet. What the? Hello, welcome back to Iwaihime. We are continuing on to Toei's story. Finishing up with Toei. We finished the all the other characters with their curse dough thing. And we're on to Toei finally.
まさかそなたまでも返り討ちとはな。だがそなたのいやそなたらすべてのススと無念は我に受け継がれた。
Once four of them had sat in this desolate doll memorial hall. Now only one was left. It symbolized how Susumu had foiled his assailants at every turn. But it was also a symbol of how the divided suit had now gathered as one. The suit not only symbolized the curse, it made its manifestation even stronger. Ooh, she heaved a sigh. It was heavy and full of malediction. The act alone burst several doll heads. A slowly stood up and opened her eyes. That act alone created thunder and robbed the sky with brilliance.
十分なすす、十分な呪い、十分な力。無論、十分な災厄を起こせるやもしれぬが、妹たちをことごとく返り討ちとしたあやつめを無視することはできぬな。あれのすすをすすろうぞ。そしてこの力をも超える呪いにてこの地に災いを。
Well, I felt the unease, no, the pain of another boulder in my stomach. My stomach was flat to the touch, but I felt swollen to the point of bursting at the seams. I'd suffered discomfort from the sensation before, but this was completely different. The boulders felt like they were gathering together and attempting to rupture my stomach from the inside out. It was pure agony. I suddenly keeled over and vomited. But the moment I threw up, the boulders felt like they were stacking up even higher inside me. I heaved over and over again, but nothing came out. But the tearing pain in my stomach refused to leave. I didn't know if I could take any more. Was this not the pain my ancestors had endured this past millennium? But this level of agony must have been the pain of the mother of the quintuplets had felt. The suit within me was trying to break the seal and burst free of its containment. My face was clammy with sweat, yet I rose to my feet. I could still hold out for a while longer. I still dreamed of a miracle too. I believed that if I could endure one more day, salvation would arrive. A splitting pain shot through my body. This was it for me. The bell from the main hall flashed in my mind. Right, now was the time to do as my mother's will said. I would meet my end in that cold bronze bell.
黒髪さんを助け出すって。約束するよ。
I glimpsed a blurry memory of a scene I'd never witnessed or forgotten so completely that it seemed utterly foreign to me. No one could possibly break that cold bell, that fate that had served as a trigger for our 1,000 years of suffering. Right.
やってみなきゃわからないよ。
There's a hunter had said that as though it were nothing.
木すら倒せぬお前に聖堂の壁が打ち破れるか。
聖堂、厚さは？
さあ、お前の拳の幅くらいはあるかもな。
Trying to remember back, did this conversation happen? Oh, it's been so while.
さすがに無理だよ。そんな厚さの合金の壁を破るなんて。拳じゃなくて大砲の出番だと思うな。
I knew Suzuhara couldn't save me.
でも
My heart dared to skip a beat. My eyes found their way to Suzuhara's and I breathed in. His expression was serene as a tranquil lake. His gaze was wholeheartedly sincere.
黒髪さんがそれを打ち破られることで救われるなら、僕はもっと修行を積んで、いつか必ずそれを僕の拳で打ち破ってみせると約束するよ。
Was he serious? At that moment, I saw it. The glint in his eyes that wasn't that of a deluded man who possessed no foresight whatsoever. They burned a divine scarlet glow, one I'd never seen before. So he truly was Mutsu. I'd known from the moment I saw him. And then, cursing my body that bore too much suit for us to be together, I screamed that it was all too late. 10 years too late, 100 years too late, 1,000 years too late. But Mutsu had come back to me after a millennium. That was a miracle in and of itself. Oh, of course, so my miracle had already been used up. Then I really was the last one. I would have marked the end to the 1,000 years of suffering. It might have been too late, but I was glad I'd been granted the miracle of Mutsu's return. You're too late, Susumu Suzuhara. 10 years too late, 100 years too late, 1,000 years too late. Why didn't you save me back then? You're too late, you're too late.
10年遅い、100年遅い、1000年遅い。
やってみなきゃわからないよ。
Suzuhara didn't hesitate a moment. He interrupted my bitter ramblings with a warm smile.
僕はもっと修行を積んで、いつか必ずそれを僕の拳で打ち破ってみせると約束するよ。
その修行、どれだけかかるやら。
そうだね。その意味では確かに黒髪さんの言う通りだね。遅すぎる。10年、100年、いや、1000年は修行しないとダメかもしれないよ。でも、それでも僕が必ずそれを打ち破って黒髪さんを助け出すって約束するよ。
As if I had 1,000 years to wait for his training. But his valiant declaration warmed my heart. There was a violent flash in the sky, followed by thunder loud enough to rip the bark off a withered tree. Even those indoors were cowed in fear. However, Susan continued training without batting an eye. Something felt strange about his punches today. The sensation was different. And the more he punched, the surer he became that he was on the verge of some kind of breakthrough. That certainty filled his heart with an odd sense of elation as he sensed he would reach a level never before attained. That feeling only grew stronger with every punch, so he didn't even register the thunder. Not even the cold downpour could dull his mind. He shook off the rain as his punches grew more and more precise. Though the storm was chilling his shoulders, his body was blazing hot from the inside out. Steam faintly rose from his collar and cuffs. It was an awe-inspiring sight, like he was ascending to some sort of divine realm. And in fact, that was what he was trying to achieve. An outsider might find that hard to believe with a boy so young. But his training, not just his ancestors' 1,000-year of training, the long discipline that had begun with Mitsu's promise was on the verge of reaching fruition. Suzumu could feel that in his fist. 3 times had the curse festering in his Okay, I'm good. 3 times had the curse festering in his friend's mental trauma targeted him, and 3 times had he yet emerged victorious. Of course, they were nothing compared to the curse that dwelled within Toei. In hindsight, perhaps they'd all simply been weak, but they were all part of the divine curse regardless. And Suzumu had destroyed all 3 of them. During this 3rd victory, Suzumu had felt a different sensation than before. And ever since then, the more he trained, the closer he could sense himself approaching the realm of the gods. It wouldn't be long until he reached it. The roar of the rain grew stronger, resembling a waterfall. Eventually, Suzume began to feel like he was really punching the cliffs behind the waterfall. Just then, he noticed the heavens were shining bright. A light shone through the clouds as though from the top of a faraway waterfall. It bore a dignified and divine presence as it mixed with waterfall's sprays, creating a rainbow. A booming voice echoed from far beyond that brilliance. Suzumu knew then and there that it was the god to whom the fish of the Susahara divine tribute style had always been dedicated. And the voice was gentle and clear, with a solemnity and grandeur that could only belong to a deity.
六神彦の御事なり陸奥よ、よくぞこの千年我にその拳を奉じ続けた。そなたの願い通り、今こそその拳に奇跡を宿らせよう。だが聞け。神の与える奇跡とは、人の身の器には有り余ってなお過ぎるものだ。その身にて奇跡を起こせば、それと引き換えにその身がどうなるか、我にもわからぬぞ。この千年という年月は、そなたにとっても十分な月日であったろう。怨嗟も憤怒も、そして悲恋の痛みも、あるいは言えて、あるいは忘却の彼方に流し去ることもできたかもしれん。だからそなたは奇跡を望まぬこともできる。人が生きて生き続ける力は、人が求めるどんな奇跡よりも尊い力があるのだから。
いいえ、彼女たちの苦しみを終わらせるためだけに今日までの日々があったのです。彼女たちは今日まで呪いを封じ続けるためだけに命を1000年もの間捧げ続けてきたのです。それを終わらせることが僕の身一つを捧げるだけで叶うのならば、喜んでこの拳にて奇跡を起こして奉りまする。
そう言うだろうと思っていた。その覚悟に揺るぎがないこと、確かに見届けたぞ。よかろう。そなたの拳に奇跡の力与えようぞ。だが神が奇跡を起こせば、一つの歯車の動きが別の歯車を動かすように、神の呪いもまた顕現する。その奇跡を拳に宿したなら、もはや一刻の猶予もないぞ。奇跡を起こすなら、いっそ
Suzumu.
進む、しっかり。
キコちゃん、
大丈夫？いつから倒れてたの？雨で。 ゃぐっしょりじゃない。
オム。
I came to lying face up on the ground, rain pouring on my face. I'd look up to the sky. Kiko was making a fuss about me catching a cold or getting struck by lightning, but none of that concerned me. I thought I made an important decision in my life, though I lost all memory of it when I woke up. I knew it was a momentous decision I've made of my own will, one that will dictate my fate. The heat was intense, like a tiny sphere of scorched iron, and bored itself under my chest.
熱あるよ。やっぱり風邪をひいちゃったんだよ。
熱は感じる。でも心配しないで。風邪とかじゃないから。
本当に大丈夫なの？
心配かけてごめんね。シャワー浴びて着替えてくるね。
進む。
I could feel a ball of heat burning in my chest. Though it was blazing hot, it brought no pain or discomfort. Slowly but surely, I could feel it spreading through my blood vessels and into my fist. Though I couldn't remember what my dream was about, I knew this had to be a divine inspiration. It wasn't arrogance or hubris speaking, purely conviction.
父さん、僕は鈴原流親善武術を完成させたよ。
The heat in my chest didn't cool even after I went to bed. Quite the opposite, it grew hotter and hotter and continued surging into my fists. I had countless dreams in my slumber. They are memories of the past 1,000 years. The memories of Mutsu, who dedicated his life to training under a waterfall in order to bring about the miracle of crushing unjust malice and demonstrating the righteous path. Eventually, that will was condensed into a single word. Haji Kensho? Crush evil and demonstrate the righteous path. In order to crush the unjust evil of the curse she and her descendants have been forced to bear and demonstrate the righteous path forward, Mutsu's descendants grew up witnessing his dedication and training and inherited it from him in turn. In order to obtain the fist to crush evil and demonstrate the righteous path, in order to keep the promise of dedicating it to God for 1,000 years. The faces of my ancestors who had upheld that oath passed by one after another. Hundreds of years flew by in the blink of an eye. As time passed, the ultimate objective behind the divine tribute style was eventually forgotten. But in spite of that, Mutsu's conviction held true, and his descendants continued to dedicate their fists to God with fervor. The memories of my great-grandfather, grandfather, and father, along with the noble training they had accumulated, flooded into me like a raging stream. And now the time has come. After 1,000 years, the miracle Mutsu had desired had finally arrived. That will of my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and the one who centered all, Mutsu, coursed through me.
今助ける鈴の目そっけー邪魔をするな
取り押さえろ殺しても構わぬ
お兄さん
何をもたもたしておるかさっさと釣り鐘を落とすのじゃ
鈴の目
No miracle had dwelled in Mutsu's fist back then, but he wished for one, even if it would take 1,000 years to arrive, and I would see it through. I would put an end to this. I would save Susanome and her daughters. Kurokami, I swear I will save you. The next day, I was still partially in a dream even after waking up. I could remember last night's dream as clear as day, as though it had been etched into my soul. The flame in my chest grew warmer, my fists were burning with scorching heat. But this wasn't enough. The heat would keep growing stronger and feeding the flames in my fists. God's miracles needed some time to settle on a human body, but I could tell that wouldn't take long. Soon the time came to leave. I decided to go to school. That way I could see Kurakami. I wanted to let her know she would soon be released from the suffering of the curse. A ray of hope would be just what she needed right now. I needed her to know as soon as possible.
進む。やっぱり熱があると思うよ。
ちょっと微熱っぽいけどね。でも全然大丈夫だよ。
無理しないで。今日はお休みしたら？
そういうわけにはいかないよ。僕も皆勤賞を狙ってるからね。
具合が悪くなってもアイドントノーノーだからね。
Kurakami wasn't here.
黒髪？今日はまだ来てないな。あいつは遅刻も欠席もグレートに気まぐれなやつだからな。
黒髪さんに何か用事でもあったの？
ちょっと伝えたいことがあって。
待ってたら来るんじゃない？午後とかあるいは部活とかに。
さすがグレート黒髪。優雅なご投稿だね。
I don't have a good feeling about this. I was trying everything in my power to go to school. I could tell my end was near, so I wanted to see Susumu's face. Once I did and confirmed no miracle would arrive, I could leave without any regrets. So I fought against the nigh unbearable agony in my stomach as I struggled to walk.
トエさん、大丈夫か？ひどい熱だ。誰か社務所に伝えてくれ。そんな高熱じゃ無理だ。あんたの家系は特に体が弱いんだから、大事にしなきゃ。
I could faintly hear the strange staff coming out of the office and encircling me, asking if I was alright, but my mind was being dragged into another haunting daydream.
早くお嬢様を母屋に。早く早く。
Let me go, let me go. I had to see Utsu, Suzumu. I was probably brought back to my room. Having spent most of my life in nightmares since the haunting started plaguing me, I could tell by the sensations, though I perceived them as something else entirely. I was lying in a room lined with countless red candles. They were all sticking out from severed hands used as The fingers twitched from time to time. They hadn't been severed for long, apparently. And hanging from the ceiling like laundry was a gallery of twitching, human-shaped lumps, their severed hands and peeled-off skin rendering them unidentifiable as male or female. Of course, I didn't let sights like these bother me. All I had to do was imagine I was watching some horror movie I'd been dragged along to see. I guess that's one way to get through it. Once I learned how to freeze my heart over with apathy, I could last through any number of hauntings. But even here, the agony in my stomach was as merciless as ever. I endured the pain and nausea welling up in my throat as I slowly got up. I knocked over several hands and candles in the process, but paid them no heed. Despite what I saw, I was confident this was my room. If I let everything I saw in the distorted world get to me, I would just thrill the evil spirits behind this haunting. Of course, it was very difficult to ignore everything my senses told me, and I could never get used to it. The whole thing was pure torture. Probably been changed into my night clothes, so I took a school uniform made of blood-stained human skin out of my closet. What the dangling bodies I got dressed? I staggered with agony to the lattice door fastened with entrails, probably the sliding door, and left the room. Everything else in the world appeared that way too. This was how things were with my doll on me. I shuddered to imagine how they looked if I dropped it. I made my way to school on unsteady feet. I walked through the Iwaihime shopping district among rows of headless corpses pierced upside down by iron skewers. Just then, a breeze caressed my hair. At that moment, the repugnant world faded away like melted snow and returned to the world I knew so well. Unless I finally regained my sanity. I checked myself in the window of a nearby clock store and discovered that while I had managed to put my uniform on, it was all disordered like I'd put it on while still waking up. I was already used to this by now, so I just made the necessary adjustments then and there without any fuss. I took a look at our clock in the store and realized that the hands were already well past noon. All that time I spent in that abhorrent world of meat and blood just staggered my way towards school. Taking 6 hours in the real world. The time I spent sane was limited, while the time I spent in nightmares was so long, yet over in a flash. That was my life. The curse was hardening into stones and filling my stomach. That had to be what this was. Every time I moved, I felt them roll around, tearing through my stomach and trying to break loose. Can I even make it to school? The moment I thought that signaled my end had all but come. Once I resumed my faltering march, the crowds cleared the way for me as though nothing were unusual. The whole town was already used to seeing me like this. No one knew I was protecting this land by suffering from hellish nightmares day after day. And in these 1,000 years, no one had thanked us. Yet, even in spite of that, we continued to sacrifice our lives to keep this curse sealed. Though we weren't doing it for honor or gratitude. This was merely the fate we've been handed these past 1,000 years. I was protecting this gentle and peaceful world, knowing that was our one and only source of pride. It was our duty to protect these children's smiles. When I thought of it that way, I realized just how much of a reward Mutsu Suzuharu's arrival was after a millennium of torment. Indeed, that was the miracle we've been handed from during the last 1,000 years, so I wouldn't hold out hope for another one ever again. I no longer had any reason to believe I'd ever be released from my suffering. As such, I stopped wishing for a miracle. All I wanted was to go to Suzuharu and see Mutsu's face one last time. That was all I asked for. And I could meet my end. The world was distorting again. Oh, joy. Iwaihime shopping district was transforming into that nightmare world once more. Countless eerie insects gushed out from the shadows and devoured the scenery. They were clambering over my feet one after another, so I froze my disgust, my heart yet again. Okay, I guess that's where we'll stop. Okay, so that ends that episode of Iwaihime. We are now starting Toei's, I guess, the final of Toei's story. And I was not expecting, the one thing I was not expecting was the way she saw the world through her hauntings, where in a way it's kind of like how, who was it? You know, it's kind of like how all of them were viewing the world, how they ended up having to view the world through their delusions, hauntings, whatever. Like there was one that was with Kanai, the one that had the Alice in Wonderland thing, and then Minobe, which I forget what Minobe's was. Kiko's was the whole flesh thing, flesh blobs thing. Oh wait, the other one was the whole idol thing. Seeing others praising her idol self, that one. And so for Toei, it is just seeing a flesh world. Everything made of weird, disturbing flesh horror, that kind of stuff. Instead of flesh blobs, everything is just made of flesh. Kind of makes me think of that one game that's coming out. What is it? Scorn? Anyway, that ends this video. If you enjoyed it, then subscribe. Check out other videos I've done, and see you next time. Bye-bye.